Engaging the intrapersonal intelligence, rethinking school curriculum. If education is meant to prepare individuals for a meaningful life, then why do we place so little value on the ability to understand oneself? Why do we treat self-awareness, reflection, and inner clarity as luxuries rather than core components of intelligence? Could it be that students with strong intrapersonal intelligence, those who quietly think, feel, process, and evolve, are often overlooked because their strengths are internal rather than outwardly expressed? If learning is not just about knowing the world, but also about knowing oneself, then shouldn't education make room for that inner journey? Students with intrapersonal intelligence have a deep capacity for self-reflection, independent thinking, and personal alignment. They are the ones who naturally ask, "Who am I? What do I value? What does this experience mean for me?" But if we never create space for them to journal, reflect, or sit with their own thoughts, how will they learn to honor their internal compass and make conscious, self-directed choices? Imagine classrooms that invite students to privately consider their own aims, identify the personal changes required to grow, and decide, on their own terms, what success truly looks like. Isn't that a more enduring form of empowerment than any grade or accolade? These learners don't need to declare their insights to the world to grow. In fact, their development often happens in quiet, introspective moments where they analyze their habits, reflect on their values, and reorient themselves around what matters. What if we taught students to explore their own Johari window, to identify their blind spots, recognize their hidden potential, and consciously shape their self-perception? What if we encourage them to consider their position within the emotional intelligence model, reflecting on their self-regulation, empathy, and motivation, not for public display, but for personal growth? Intrapersonal intelligence is not about isolation. It's about depth, clarity, and intentionality. These learners often have a natural sense of how they relate to others when they need change and how they respond to life's challenges. Rather than rushing to perform or impress, they ask, "Is this true for me?" But if education continues to celebrate speed, volume, and extroversion, where is the space for students who excel through quiet thought, personal discernment, and meaningful self-direction? Shouldn't classrooms offer both external engagement and internal exploration, recognizing that some of the most profound growth happens within? If we want students to live purposefully, adapt thoughtfully, and lead with integrity, we must ask, are we teaching them to know themselves or only to keep up with others? Because when students are encouraged to consider their personal goals, identify what needs to change within, and shape their own developmental path, they don't just become better learners, they become grounded, intentional, and resilient human beings. And in a world that's constantly pulling us outward, the ability to look inward is not just intelligence, it's wisdom. Intrapersonal intelligence is the profound ability to understand oneself deeply, one's emotions, motivations, strengths, and limitations, and to use this understanding to navigate life with clarity and purpose. Students with strong intrapersonal intelligence are naturally reflective, introspective, and driven by an inner compass rather than external validation. Yet traditional education often neglects the inner life, focusing almost entirely on outward achievement, measurable performance, and standardized expectations. If knowing oneself is foundational to resilient, meaningful living, shouldn't education be designed to honor and cultivate this powerful form of intelligence? Imagine classrooms where students are not just asked to memorize facts or produce outputs, but are given time and space to reflect on who they are becoming. Where students engage in activities that ask them to identify their personal goals, consider necessary changes for growth, explore their values, and map their emotional responses to different experiences. Wouldn't this help students not only succeed academically, but also build lives of purpose, self-awareness, and authentic fulfillment? When intrapersonal intelligence is engaged meaningfully, students develop a lifelong skill, the ability to monitor their own thoughts, regulate their emotions, and choose paths aligned with their true selves. They become resilient, not because they never encounter failure, but because they know how to adapt, recalibrate, and stay rooted in their deeper priorities. They develop internal motivation, moving beyond rewards and punishments and becoming individuals who can navigate uncertainty and transformation with maturity and insight. Long-term, nurturing this intelligence produces adults who are self-possessed, ethically grounded, and adaptable. These are the people who thrive in entrepreneurship, leadership, therapy, research, and creative fields, not because they seek approval, but because they have a clear understanding of their motivations, values, and visions. They are the change makers who don't just follow trends. They create their own paths because they have taken the time to know who they are and what they stand for. Engaging intrapersonal intelligence also builds a crucial foundation for emotional intelligence and mental health. Students who understand themselves are better equipped to manage stress, recognize burnout, seek help when needed, and nurture their emotional well-being proactively. They are less likely to be derailed by external pressures because they have internal tools for reflection, regulation, and resilience. Isn't that a critical skill set in a world increasingly marked by rapid change, emotional volatility, and complex challenges? In a society that often encourages constant busyness and external comparison, intrapersonal intelligence offers an antidote: the wisdom to slow down, reflect, and act with intention. If education fails to cultivate this skill, we risk producing students who know how to achieve but don't know how to choose. Or worse, who succeed by external standards but feel hollow inside. Shouldn't true education teach students how to think about their lives, not just how to perform within them? To nurture intrapersonal intelligence, educators must create structured opportunities for reflection, goal setting, emotional mapping, and personal visioning. Students should be encouraged to consider their own Johari window, to assess their strengths and blind spots, to decide their own aims and the personal changes needed to achieve them, and to reflect on where they stand within models like emotional intelligence frameworks. Private journaling, reflective essays, personal development plans, and guided meditations could become integral parts of the learning process, not optional extras. When we fully engage intrapersonal intelligence, we don't just create better students. We cultivate more self-aware leaders, ethical innovators, compassionate healers, and fulfilled individuals. We equip a generation not just to excel in the external world, but to live from the inside out, with purpose, authenticity, and deep personal wisdom. And that, ultimately, is the heart of a truly transformative education.